You are my vision, oh keep
Back in Nehemiah's day, he walked around and inspected the walls of the city. We here at Trinity, that's what we've been doing over the last 3 years, really. Last year at the annual meeting, Tim Heron did a really nice job sharing with us the sense of this visioning process we've been doing and have of Trinity's next 10 years and strategic priorities for our future. One of those priorities was space. Thinking about our building. You know, we've been talking about this for years now, but we're excited today to share a big update with you. The building steering team is a group that's been meeting for a while. I want to just acknowledge them as Kevin Hunter comes. Kevin has been a part of that team. Nalani Linder, Mion Counts, Tim Heron, Rod Nash, and myself. We've met and done a lot of work together, and we're excited to share some of that work with you today. So, Kevin, would you come? Kevin will be sharing, and then also we're going to hear from Joel Zalstra from our Transformational Presence team on an exciting vision for the future from our outreach ministries as well.
Let's get into this thing here, and so, you know, the context, this is how do we really think about where we've been, and how do we make sure we don't lose our history and who we are as a congregation, and some of the foundations that this church has been built on in the community. How do we also face the realities of this crumbling wall, so to speak, this old broken down place which we have come to love? And then how do we, as we move to the future, as we think about the strategic vision and hopes that we all have, how do we, you know, really kind of make sure that we hold those things together and put all that in a package that we're all excited about, and ultimately it's what God really would have for us. What I love about that Nehemiah story is it's this great picture of what the wall and the city represents, right? It represents safety. It represents something that God's people are actually doing. And what I love about it, as well as the city of Jerusalem rebuilds, it's all of the tribes, all the families are having their little part to do, right? There's a government grant in there, right? You know, I forget her name. Who's the queen in the story? Is it Esther? No, it's not Esther. Anyway, she wins a beauty contest. This is one of God's people. She wins a beauty contest. She marries the king. She then gets this grant from the government, right? And it's all about the family of God plugging all the holes and making sure the wall is strong, which is really, I think, a great example for what we're talking about. Next slide. You know, as Matt talked about, we had a plan put together that you all approved and we adopted this past year. But this is the vision. Everything that we're talking about with the building steering committee, everything that the building should represent, ultimately has to help us as a congregation do this, right? It has to lead back to help us live out our mission and vision, right? If this stuff, if we can't do this stuff, if the building doesn't help us do this stuff, then all we're doing is trying to put, some old bricks and mortar together. So transformation is critical. That's who we want to be. We want to, by the presence of God, we want to be transformed as people, and we want our community to be transformed. We want to have this authentic and place that we can worship and we can welcome the community. The values of the church are bolded in those statements. And this whole notion of we want sacred and community space, that we can have a place where we can worship in a profound way that's sacred, but also a place that's a welcoming place for our community to get involved with us. Next slide. These are the priorities. As we think about the future, these six things are the things that we as a congregation say we want to be about. We want to be about transformation. We want to be about worship. We want to be about children and youth in a profound way. We want to be collaborators, and whatever we do through collaboration, grow our impact in the community. We want to have this notion that we're going to hear from Joel in a second of this focused outreach. What is our mission in this community? And then how do we have space that helps all that happen? So with our mission and vision in the back of our brain, right, the BCS wants to give an update today on, one, where have we been, the key decisions that have been made, and what are the key next steps. So over the last 3 years, we're going to give you a quick little, an overview of what we've been doing, right? Sometimes we tend to forget all the steps that we've been having, and so this simply is just a way to kind of remind us where we've been, the key decisions, and then what we're ultimately recommending, and then some decisions that the session has made. So in 2013, the building committee was formed. We did a big congregational survey, if you remember that. And the survey showed that you all overwhelmingly wanted to stay put, right? That there was something special about this place at this point of the wedge, in between the north end and the south end, that this was an important place, that we feel like it was a high priority to stay here. And then there was also this concept of what would happen if we began to think with our faith-based neighbors just to the east of us, right? Changing Lives Ministries, the Salvation Army, and we began to think about what a redevelopment of 6th Avenue could be, right? The opportunities to bring God's people together and just ask the question, should we be thinking more strategically bigger than we've had been? So the key decision coming out of that first year, let's move forward and look for solutions that would allow Trinity to remain here and enhance our worship and our outreach ministry in the community. In 2014, we explored a number of strategic alliances with our neighbors, and we talked to the Tacoma Housing Authority and began to think through what's the housing situation here? Could we do something that we've never even dreamed about before, but what if we could begin to go vertical with a neighborhood? And what if, through our partnership, some of the housing solutions could be developed? We developed a relationship with the University of Washington Architectural School, and they came up with some unbelievable concepts of what this would look like, the whole redevelopment area, but also just for Trinity. The church-wide strategic planning process was launched. And the building steering committee was thinking, okay, how does that push or pull and link to that whole process? We actually considered a merger with Urban Grace downtown, and what that kind of could look like for our community. And then we also got the building steering committee to visit some other sites around the Puget Sound area, up in Shoreline, Renton, downtown Seattle, looking for other signs of hope that churches kind of redevelop their buildings, their properties, etc. Key decisions made coming out of that year, that the strategic plan was basically completed and forwarded, and then we wanted to continue to do our due diligence on developing potential solutions for our building. So stay the course, keep moving forward. The next slide is some of the concepts that the UW students came up with. Really thinking about the whole property and how do we maximize it, and some really unique things, right? How do you keep the sanctuary part and then redevelop with facilities all the way around it, potentially a housing hunk, 3 or 4 story building over on the north lawn there and around the back. So some really amazing concepts came to fruition, and probably would have cost a lot more money, we found out. Let's jump forward to 2015. We also explored the purchase of the old United Methodist Church, Epworth-Lessard, about 7 blocks to the west and a couple blocks off of 6th. We looked at the old Wonder Bread building just by Bryant Elementary, and so just began to explore let's make sure we kind of turn over every stone possible that would allow us to generally remain in this area. We evaluated all these housing and redevelopment configuration with the partners. We met with a lot of stakeholders from the city. We met with the mayor, some council members, land developers. It's amazing how connected our little congregation is with key leadership and decision makers in the community. And had a lot of great meetings. Met with the Presbytery around what are some Presbyterian pots of money that we could begin to look at and explore. And then certainly the strategic plan was approved and adopted. And then with that, the Transformational Presence Committee began to do some work. Okay, in light of this division and direction, in light of what we need to be thinking about with the building, how should we as a committee begin to come up with some concepts? Key decisions made in this past year. In light of all the options, the collaborative development for a more profound 6th Avenue partnership just didn't work. It didn't pencil out financially. The partners were at different places. Salvation Army is going to move forward and probably do some housing development with Tacoma Housing Authority. They were probably the one that was ready to move the quickest. Changing Lives is really interested. The collaboration has been tremendous. We're in better relationships, and we think are going to have a profound impact in this little area because of all the thinking and processing that we've done. But it just didn't work right now, and we felt like it was time to cross that off the list and move forward. Then we looked at, okay, well, what if we could do a redevelopment just on the Trinity property? And the decision was made that it's just not big enough. The unique shape of it didn't pencil out, and so we crossed that one off the list. Then we decided to move forward with the due diligence and say, okay, well, what would it cost? Let's do a real budget for what it would cost to redevelop just our existing building and looking at our own issues here with this structure. And then, one of the things we realized, we said 100% here. There's been so much growth. The number is actually, since 2008, there's been 600% growth in the number of children, okay? So it's putting pressure on our just our classroom space, right? We had to lose the library just to get more space for kids to meet. So it was critical that, we just had to do something in the relatively near term to make this all happen. And then we wanted to move forward with what it would look like to begin to design a capital campaign to get the dollars in the door for this thing to happen. So I'm going to stop right there. Joel's going to come up and walk us through quickly.
Just the idea that this isn't about Trinity going out into the community, just running programs, that in the process of our relationships with our neighborhood, we are transformed as a congregation as well. And that's, I think, an important link as we think moving forward with this building. What would it be? How does architecture, how does design reflect transformation of our community and our congregation together? So real quick, just a little snapshot of what we've been up to the past few years. This has been really the taking stock period around strategic planning, looking at our existing programs, and really getting a feel for the neighborhood sense of Trinity's role in our neighborhood. And I think there's one theme that kind of brings it all together, and that's focus. There's a desire to have more focus. And when the past couple of years, we've said, rather than the breadth of programs that we have that are touching many different people, it would be more valuable for us to have more points of intersection with fewer people, and that's where the real transformation happens. So one of the ways that we did that, one of the things that I think we voted on as a congregation last year was rather than programs rather than our outreach focused on programs, we're focusing on geography. And we actually have an identified geography saying, this is where we are going to put our resource as a congregation as it relates to our transformational presence work. We're going to really focus on a particular set of blocks and say, we want people in these blocks to know who Trinity is and to see Trinity as we're bringing the geography. I think another piece that came out in all of this is there are a lot of people that know of the good work that happens at Trinity, and to use a metaphor, it kind of functions in a closet. It's behind the scenes. It's really, there's limited resources that people see, but there's just good work happening with few resources. And I think something that we realize in this is we have an opportunity to shift from being behind the scenes to being more out front and to become more of a beacon of this neighborhood. So people not only know that, yes, there's good things happening at Trinity, but people will say, I want to come to Trinity to use it as a resource so that good things, so that my ideas can come to fruition. I see this as a resource for me as a member of this community. The other thing that we just noted was, and this is throughout this whole process, if we're going to do what needs to be done with this building, it's going to be hard for us to take this on given the size of our congregation. So we're going to have to look for external funding sources as well. And so this is one of the things that the Transformational Presence Vision allows us to do, is to bring in some external resources to this conversation. Okay. So the main vision here is, what if the ground floor of Trinity was recognized as the Bryant Neighborhood Center? And it's a hard thing to imagine right now because the basement, it doesn't reflect much. There's probably not excitement when you think about what the basement is. But I'll have a couple images in a little bit. If you can think about a warm, welcoming, inviting, functional space that people say, wow, this is a resource for me and my community. This is something that has something to offer us. This is our first place that we're going to think of when we want to get excited about our community. This is going to be our go-to resource. The other, I think the focus of this space would be things like education, so training. We've got programs connected with the schools already, but what other training programs might be necessary? Entertainment. What would it look like for this to be a place where entertainment could happen, where people could come together for films or lectures or music, whatever that could be. Recreation, and then just multi-purpose spaces. So if there's a neighborhood center functioning in the ground floor of our facility, it wouldn't necessarily exclusively have to be just for neighborhood-based programs. There's lots of overlap between what the congregation and the neighborhood would use that space for. Okay, you want to go to the next one? So as far as what would this look like aesthetically, and what are the implications of this for the building? I think one of the main things is that the main entrance for the building would be on the 6th Avenue side, and it would say loud and clear that this is the Bryant Neighborhood Center and its Trinity Presbyterian Church. And our hope would be that when people come by this space, they not only see it as a worshiping community, but they also see it as a resource for this community in terms of the ongoing development of the community. If you can imagine a space that's top-notch. I know it's hard to think about that for the space downstairs, but if we did some things with lighting, if we did some things with the floor, Isaiah and I went around this morning and we counted 13 windows that are currently boarded up down there. So we do have natural light that can go into the basement. What if on the 6th Avenue side we have a grand staircase as you enter, one that goes down and one that comes up, where there's an open field between the two levels. So it feels like you're coming into one building rather than either going downstairs into the dungeon or upstairs into the chamber. So these are just, these are all basement spaces up here. These are some of the possibilities with this feel. I think we could create excellent resource space that could be used for a lot of different things. But most of all, I think it's important that people would see, Trinity sees this space as our own, but also our neighborhood says, this space is ours. This is where we're going to come for needs that we have, but also ideas and dreams that we have for our community. This is a place where that stuff happens.
Thanks, Joel. Okay, so next slide. So where are we today? As we head into 2016, really, we've come down to here's a building option that we're putting forth. the cost of what those recommendations are, how we're going to raise the money to do that, and then what's the timeline. Next slide, Chad. So, how do we best upgrade for mission? The decision's been made to use this footprint, okay? Not try and expand out this way or that way or do whatever, but it's to say, okay, how do we look at the footprint of the current building and renovate and repair that space? Let's look at what would it look like for a total renovation of all the existing space. So we got a lot of safety upgrades that we got to do. Just to get the building from a seismic perspective safe, and it doesn't mean we're going to have to do everything, but we think with all the kids and the community being in here, we really need to make sure we're taking seriously the seismic and the safety upgrades that really need to happen. And we think there's some architectural upgrades, the things that Joel was talking about, that we can enhance the space. How do we make it more efficient? How do we make it how do we grow classroom space, both on the downstairs, but also in the mezzanine level up above? So there's a lot of things that we think we can do that can actually upgrade the space as well. Next slide. Okay, so here's the number. Now, anytime you put numbers up, right, it probably starts a lot of questions. Oh my gosh, look at that number, or I don't understand this or that. We understand that, right? And it's, so one of the things we thought about, hey, let's just don't even put the numbers up there, right? Let's just give the big bottom line and start to, because we don't really know exactly yet. But you need to know that there was a team of folks and professionals that came in and helped us develop a budget that we really feel like is very full, okay? We don't think this number is going to grow. There's a lot of contingency in here. There's some cost escalators in here in case, 3 years from now it's even more costly to build than it is right now. So we've gone through this thing with a pretty fine-tooth comb and built in everything that we think is going to need to be considered long-term. So the safety and structural upgrades. It's just about $700,000 and a little more just to make sure that the roof over the sanctuary is all put together and connected and redone, new roof, all that stuff. So a lot of this is just the basic safety and structural upgrades that we need to do if we're going to stay in this building. The operating systems, right? Heating, fire, electrical, plumbing, all of those things that need to be upgraded, that's included in that second number there. And then the building enhancements. It's a new kitchen, more classroom space, the stairwells that Joel was talking about, better office space. How do we think about really enhancing the overall space? What if we could begin to build offices and classrooms, not just storage behind the choir loft here? There's space up and down that could be utilized for mission purposes. And then the last number there is all the professional service, project management, contingency, cost escalators, all of those things that we built into that thing. For this total of over $3 million, right? Big number. Big number. Well, what's the plan? How are we going to get there? The session has just made a decision that we wanted to move forward and hire a capital campaign consultant, right? We know we got to figure out a plan to get some money in the door, and we need to get a professional person that's experienced working with churches to help us get there. We want to design and launch that capital campaign, and we think there's 3 kind of big chunks or phases of the capital campaign. One of those is, the first one is, okay, what are we as a congregation? What's the membership and the Friends of Trinity? What are we willing to do? It'll be hard for us to ask partners to invest in this building if we haven't made the decision to invest up front and make a leadership part of this thing. So the very first part of the campaign will be to say, okay, Trinity, where are we at? And we've got some general numbers that we think the consultants would say, as a rule of thumb, you can kind of look at this and that. We don't know if it's $1 million. We don't know if it's $1.5 million that Trinity can do. We don't know, but we think it's going to break out in relatively equal chunks like this over the three pieces. The community-based stuff. How can we go to fund programs that we're launching out of this new space? You know, so it's local investors, it's partners, Friends of Trinity, other organizations that could partner with us to help raise the bucks for this. And then the third piece is okay, where are some national funds? Where are some foundations and people that don't necessarily live in Tacoma, but that might be interested in doing the kind of thing that we're endeavoring and dreaming about doing? So we think that it'll break out roughly like that, but we'll know more as this campaign developed and is designed, and we'll come back and give you obviously some updates based on that. Next slide. Okay, so here's the basic timeline. We think that campaign will start, really, the planning phase of it will start probably this spring and summer, right? Just to bring the council on board and begin to put kind of the big tent poles of the campaign together. And it'll start in earnest, we'll be coming to you all this end of the summer and into the fall, and then that part will end basically by the new year, and then the gift collection phase will proceed from there. Simultaneously, we'll be thinking about, okay, how do we move from, we think, some really high-level engineering drawings that we've done to create the cost numbers. Now we need to translate that into working drawings. So what do we really want to do in the building? What's the stairwells going to look like? And then we'll start to put all of the designs and the architectural pieces together, so that we'll have a pretty good idea as that first campaign launches. And then the next two phases will launch in 2017. And we think, if it goes well, that the construction could literally begin in the middle of 18 to the end of 18. And we think it'll take a minimum of 9 months and maybe up to 12 months for the overall construction phase to be completed and finished. So that's, in a nutshell, the good news, the challenge that is before us, and I think it's kind of an exciting time. If you're like all of us, you're kind of going, my gosh, how's this all going to happen? We're a hardworking, busy people already, but I think we're thrilled as the committee to be moving forward and making these recommendations. And then the session has approved, the capital campaign. They've approved the transformational presence concept. And so we're excited to move forward. So Matt's going to come up and walk us through the last slide, Jess.
I initially was in a place of reluctance when I started in thinking about what is it that we have to do. But as we've gone along this process, my heart's grown, my imagination has grown, and I am really excited about the possibilities that lie in front of us. It is going to require a lot of us, all of us. And we want to engage all of you in this work. But first things first, we want to put a couple calls out. One is to pray. We know that this will go nowhere without the movement of God and God's Holy Spirit among us, not just with us, but in our wider neighborhood, community. That's true all the time, but especially like at this time. The second thing we want to invite you to is to these listening posts. These are basically a time for you. We want to hear from you. The session, all 9 members of the session voted unanimously on this to go forward in this way. Those people, along with the members of the building steering committee, are going to be present to talk with all of you about this. There's lots of questions to ask. We don't have time right now to go through all of them, but we really want you to be at one of these listening posts. All of the feedback that it will be recorded and brought back to session from that. One is next Sunday after worship. And the other one that's more general for the whole church is the 2nd of March, a Wednesday evening, about 10 days from now. You're invited to come to one of those. There'll be multiple members of the session and building steering team there to listen to you and to your questions and your concerns and your excitement. The other place where those are going to happen is in Trinity community groups. We just want to use our existing infrastructure, the people that you're in community already with. Some of you are a part of those groups, some of you aren't. If you're not, please come to one of the general meetings. If you are, just know that you talk to your other people in your community group. I've already sent out some of this for planning purposes for groups to get ready to spend some time on this at their next meeting, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then what is the next actual step? And Kevin already alluded to this. These are the very concrete things that we're talking about. What are the next steps? Is we're going to move forward to hire a capital campaign professional. And then we're going to launch a renovation design phase. And of course, both of those things, they'll run in parallel. That's how these things work. And we'd invite, again, all of your participation in this. We want your feedback, and we'll give you ways to do that, to give your feedback on what that might mean for this new building we keep talking about, the renovated building. And then we'll have a big group involved with our capital campaign as well. So those are big things, but those are the real specific next steps for us as a congregation. So I encourage you to go to one of those listening posts.
You are my vision, O King of my heart. Nothing else satisfies, only you, Lord. You are my best thought by day.